Good afternoon. My name is Allison Dunn, and I am your executive business coach. I am here today with Chris Russell. He is the CEO, founder, and managing director of RecTech Media. Welcome, Chris. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us a little bit about you and kind of where your career has taken you to this point.
Yeah, sure. So I think I have a pretty unique career path under my belt. I've been in the what we call the online recruiting space for about 20 years now. In fact, this is my 20th year in the industry. And I started out running my own job board company, which I started back in 1999, back during the dot-com boom days of yesterday. And I ran it's called All County Jobs. It was a small network of local county sites for the Northeast. So where I live here in Fairfield County, Connecticut is where I started it. So I launched fairfieldcountyjobs.com after having done some work in the web design area. And I started that, coded up in the summer one night and after work and launched it. Had some friends in HR. They signed on right away and kind of from there, the rest is history. So I built that into a 20-site network over the years, focusing on different counties in the area. And after about 13 years, I sold it to one of my clients, an HR company who ended up buying it. And
Congratulations.
Thank you. From there, I learned a lot along the way about just marketing jobs online and attracting talent online and things like that. Running a job board, you really pick up a lot of tips and tactics around how to do these things. Started doing some writing around recruiting and all that kind of good stuff. And after I sold the company, I dabbled in a few more career startups, ended up being a recruiter as well for a couple of companies here in Connecticut. And the last 4 years have been spent to doing a lot of writing, podcasting, blogging, and consulting for employers around their digital recruiting strategies overall. So that's kind of where I am today.
Wow, that's fantastic. I'm a fellow New Hampshire gal who moved to Boise in 2013. So how's the East Coast weather today? This fine day in July.
I'm going to New Hampshire in a couple weeks actually. So for vacation, so to Lake Squam.
Oh, very nice, excellent, cool. So nice to have that connection as well. Thank you for sharing sort of kind of your trajectory, your path. What have you found to be the most interesting developments in your field over the last 5 years? How has it changed?
Yeah, it's definitely, recruiting today is a very technically driven role, and you really have to know technology well to do your job well, I think. If I had to pick out a few kind of trends, I guess, number one is sourcing has really grown in the last 3 to 5 years. There's so many sourcing tools now you can use to go out and find talent that you just never had before. All kinds of people databases and things like that. You've got people like Google and Facebook coming into the market. Google has basically an ATS now. They have a job board and some other different cloud solutions that employers can take advantage of. Facebook has a job board now, so you're seeing kind of even the big guys, traditionally tech companies, really get interested into the talent attraction business overall. And I think the kind of the most recent thing is really the recruiting automation taking place through things like recruiting chatbots and that type of technology to help assist and augment the job of a recruiter overall.
That is some significant change of placing ads in the classifieds for someone, certainly, yep. Right? Totally. One of the things that you've kind of, I believe, coined is the employer value proposition. Can you tell me what does that mean?
Yeah, I didn't coin it. It's basically it's a way for companies to create messaging around who they are and what they have to offer potential employees. It's something that I think every employer needs. You need a reason why you should come work there, and that message should be then promoted out to potential candidates overall. But essentially, if you break it down, boil it down, I've done a few of these projects over the last couple of years. It's essentially coming up with a sort of a tagline and then a set of supporting statements around why it's good to work there overall. So, for instance, the last one I did was for the state of Connecticut, for instance. So I did a whole survey project with their employee base, researched what people are saying on Indeed and Glassdoor, the reviews, And we came up with a set of, with a tagline and a set of supporting statements that kind of focus on what their core benefits are. And we use that messaging to go out there and promote to candidates on their career site, on their social recruiting channels and things like that. The EVP tagline ended up being "Make an Impact" with the CT at the end of impact capitalized. And that's kind of what we use to promote the overall opportunities that the state offers potential candidates. It's a place to come serve your state, make an impact to your fellow citizens, things like that, around the why to come work there overall. So that's kind of in a nutshell what it is basically.
So let's say a company has never created one. What would be your kind of, how many people should be involved in creating one? Is it only led by HR? Like, what would be your quick tips on, for my next job ad, I don't have let's say I don't have one. What do I do?
I work for one of the companies I worked for as a recruiter was a small e-commerce software company. We had about 10 people. I was the first recruiter they ever hired. And one of the first things I did to kind of find out this stuff was basically I just did an email blast to the people who work there. And I said simply, why do you like to work here? Reply back with one or two things that you think are great about working at this organization. And I then used that content that they gave me into, I built a little PowerPoint deck on top 10 reasons to come work here. Right. And I use their voice. I use their actual words that they told me about why they like coming to work every day. And I use their voice. It was very authentic, transparent. I didn't have to basically write it on my own. I used the employee base. I leveraged the employees that were there, let them speak and tell me why. And that's basically an easy way of doing something like that overall. Any EVP project, whether it's you're doing yourself or hiring a firm to do it, is going to do a survey anyway. And at the time, I didn't realize I was doing an EVP project. I was just trying to figure out, okay, well, I need weapons here to go out there and for the war for talent here and help attract people to the company. And I need reasons why, and they help give me those.
That's fantastic. I love that. I love that answer because I think it's very authentic, and often we don't know why people want to work for us. So why not ask the people who do work for us? Yeah. It gives us a lot of clarity.
Yeah, and you'd be surprised too at what the answers you get. The stuff you wouldn't think of individually. That wisdom of the crowd is really good for uncovering these things.
For sure. Have you, so just to make sure that I understand, so you go and you create this, you've asked people, I love the fact that you're talking about, putting it in a video format, like you hear how people are saying it as opposed to just words. So how do you then incorporate that into your posting? How have you done that creatively?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I would say that, there's a few tactics you can use to do this. Obviously, you want to put this messaging on your career site overall. A lot of companies now will have their tagline, the AVP tagline, kind of front and center. As soon as you go to their careers page, that's the message that you see overall. And then below there, you can kind of support the different aspects of why coming to work there. But from a tactical standpoint too, create a hashtag, right, around that overall. You see a lot of companies a lot of big companies have their own career-related hashtags that they use to go out there. And when they're posting on social media, they hashtag their posts around that. It could be something like, let's see here, we are company name hashtag is the hashtag, right? I've seen that a few times. Or life at company name is the hashtag. Obviously, make an impact is the hashtag we use for the state of Connecticut overall. So those are some little tips and tricks you can use in there. And then using when you're creating visual posts on social media, you have to be very visual these days on your social media channels anyway. I like to basically, use the tagline as almost like an icon, a little logo, if you will, to help with that as well. You want to constantly reinforce that messaging in everything you do across social media, your career site, your job, with the job boards you post on. So on your job postings as well, make sure you talk about the EVP in the job posting, whether it's, in the about company section or maybe in a line at the top, help get people excited about why they should come work there. But use that messaging wherever and whenever you are promoting your jobs.
Fantastic. I think with such a low employment rate currently, at least in our job market, and I'm sure Connecticut is no different, trying to figure out exactly how you strategically roll out a strong campaign to capture all of the opportunities in social media, as well as what platforms to post. So could you give us your expert advice on where to post, how often to post? I get the tie back using hashtags and being consistent with your EVP. What is working well? Like, what is the minimum people should be doing to get exposure?
I just did actually a proposal for a company. I'll use it as an example, maybe, since it's kind of top of mind. So this company is it's a blue collar company. They're in warehouses and transportation and logistics, and it's they're looking for a very blue collar workforce overall. So, for instance, for them, I'm recommending that LinkedIn should not be a big part of what they're actually doing from a promotional standpoint. They should be on places like Facebook and Instagram, which is really where those target audience lives overall. So, on Facebook, you should be posting at least 3 times a week around your company, your Facebook business page. If you don't have a Facebook business page, get one, or you can even create a Facebook careers page just for your career team and your HR department if you just want to keep it separate from the main one. Instagram is another big one, especially with millennials. That's definitely a great place to go brand yourself overall. You want to leverage those particular channels as much as possible. It's really an omni-channel approach these days when it comes to attracting talent online. So you got your career site, you got your job board, you've got social media, email as well. If you're not emailing potential candidates in your database, you're missing out on a chance to kind of nurture them a bit and talk to them on a regular basis. So you're seeing a lot of companies now will have their talent communities, and at the very least, you should be messaging them at least once a month, telling them what's new with your organization, getting them excited, welcoming new employees on there, and just really becoming a career newsroom for yourself overall. I think a lot of employers struggle with content, so to speak, when it comes to attracting candidates, and you really have to take a kind of a proactive mindset and create content that resonates with potential audiences, potential people who want to work there. So that means showing off your workers in action. I love one of my a good onboarding trick or tactic is to welcome all your new employees via social media. Take a picture of them, welcome them, maybe do a little Q&A blog post with them, and that's a great piece of content. It's easy to get. That not only gives them some puts them in the spotlight a bit and kind of welcomes them. It creates a really great feel for the onboarding process overall. And it's a piece of content you can use to populate your social media channels.
And something that they can use to share with their, friends and colleagues and, people who possibly are also recruitable candidates. So,
that reminds me too, get your employees involved as well on social media. Get ambassadors to come on and reshare your content, and that's one of the ways you can actually get more engagement with your social media posts is to be able to get people to like, comment, reshare everything you post online. That's only going to help the algorithms on all these platforms, whether it's LinkedIn, Facebook, whatever. The more engagement you have on that particular post, the more people are going to see it. And so it's imperative to really get your team involved and ask them, ask them to participate in what you share online, because it's only going to help them help you overall.
Absolutely. I appreciate the fact that you pointed out, obviously targeting the right type of social media channel to the right market that you're trying to fill the position for. Is it okay if I ask you if there's a rule of thumb of what's you've seen as the best ROI for a professional white collar job, and then maybe even just a blue collar job? Like, what's the right platform to pay to post the job? I think you just kind of covered social media. Okay.
I'll go over it again. I mean, Facebook is definitely on the blue collar side of things overall, whereas LinkedIn is definitely more white collar. Yep. There was a discussion today I saw on Facebook about Twitter. I belong to a couple recruiting groups, and somebody was asking about, is Twitter still relevant? It's not the greatest thing for companies overall. I mean, I would just basically automate Twitter if I could. But definitely white collar LinkedIn stuff, getting people to comment on your post. So having that company page is really valuable. You can post, for every piece of content you post on social media, Allison. So it's like for every 5 posts you have, one should be a job essentially. The rest should be more stuff about why you want to come work there, highlighting a new employee, a piece of news, anything else besides a job, because there's too many jobs already on social media. So you definitely want to highlight the benefits of working for your company in these posts and really give job seekers an inside look at what it's like to work there. That's why they want to. That's why they're reading this stuff. I've heard Instagram described as the Glassdoor for millennials, or the visual Glassdoor for millennials overall. It's a visual look at your organization. So show it off, right? Show people in training, show them at work, show events at your company overall, and make it a very visual strategy in your part overall. One of my former employers does little quizzes every now and then on their Instagram stories, for instance, about it's a cruise line, so they quiz people at the ships, where they're going, things like that. That's a great little tactic, right? Using those, leveraging those platforms, and just kind of educating yourselves on the platforms themselves. Are constantly changing focus. The algorithms are constantly changing, and so it's really imperative that today's recruiting marketing team stay on top of these different trends and tactics, because the landscape is constantly shifting and it's kind of hard to keep up sometimes.
Do you have a favorite platform?
Yeah, so follow me. I definitely push out a lot of that stuff on my across my podcast called RecTech. I do a webinar series around this as well, rectechlive.com. Around that, but just Google. There are some. I'll give you a great example of some Facebook groups to go to that you can join. Recruiters Online, Sourcers Through Code, Recruiting Marketing Tactics, Facebook Corporate Employers Group. If you go on Facebook today and just do a search for recruiting or recruiters, and you click over to the groups tab, you'll see a whole list of these. I belong to probably 20 of them, and they're a really good water cooler for recruiters to go and learn. Overall, you're seeing a lot of interactions on there with, hey, I'm about to install this applicant tracking system. What do you know about it? Or how do you do this? How do you do that? It's a really great learning tool overall. So that'd be my number one tip for recruiters out there. Go and join these Facebook groups and start learning overall, connecting with your other colleagues.
Fantastic. So you just mentioned you run a RecTech podcast. How long have you been doing that?
I've been podcasting for over 10 years, probably. The RecTech podcast, something I started when I ventured back out on my own after the recruiting gigs ended. So it's been about 3 years now. And I talk to both practitioners and vendors in the space on how they use technology to hire talent overall. I also go to I go to a lot of conferences as well in the space. So I do some on the scene reporting interviews as well to help recruiters out there learn. And to me, to be a recruiter today, you have to learn. You have to keep on top of this stuff. So podcasts are another great way to do that. We actually have a site called hrpodcasters.com, which aggregates 30 plus different recruiting podcasts and HR podcasts out there. So that's a good resource as well to tap into. But go just, subscribe to a few of these shows. They're all free, and it's all free learning out there. So it's there for the taking if you want it.
Fantastic. So from all of the interviews you've done over the last 10 years, what's the most interesting thing you've learned from one of your guests?
So I'll give a shout out to my friend Tim Sackett, who you may know or may not. He runs a staffing firm out in Michigan, and we were doing an interview one day, and I asked him, we were talking about finding new recruiters to come on, work for him, things like that. And he goes, no, you know what, Chris, one of my best sourcing stories I ever had was I knew this priest, and he was a pastor at some church, and he was looking to basically do something different. He didn't want to be a pastor any longer because it wasn't really paying the bills for him and his family. And so he hired a priest to come and be a recruiter for him. And so I call it the pastor to recruiting pipeline. And it just struck me as a kind of a interesting, funny story in terms of where to go find recruiters these days. He was looking for somebody who knew how to talk and connect with people, and a pastor certainly does that, right? They've got the
Absolutely.
skills to do that, and I thought that was a great story overall, and very ingenious of him to go out and hire this pastor, right? I mean, if you put a job on today for a recruiter and then a pastor applied to it, chances are 9 out of 10 companies are not going to hire that person. But Tim did, and I give him a lot of
Probably
credit
not.
for that, for doing
But they
something like
have
that.
all the right skills, right?
Yeah,
That
exactly,
build that rapport. So makes
exactly.
perfect sense to me. Oh, I love that. That's a great that's a great tip. So I've got a couple more questions. So what are the top mistakes that you see companies or recruiters do when writing their job descriptions or their advertisement posts?
Great question, and definitely a pet peeve in the industry. You're seeing a lot of people talk about this lately. At least I am online. The thing that you have to remember about job descriptions is that a job description is not a substitute for a job ad overall or
Agreed.
job posting. If you,
Wholeheartedly. Yeah.
if you are posting stuff online, do not cut and paste from your applicant tracking system, because the chances are that posting, that description, is just a bunch of bullet points that does not talk to the candidate, does not sell the job, right? Does not excite the candidate about trying to get them to apply. And that's what the goal of a job posting
Right.
is to sell that opportunity, to convince them to click the apply button immediately and get them to convert. And if you start to think about that mindset a bit, then you can go back to your job descriptions and turn them into job ads or job postings that speak to the candidate. So, removing a lot of the corporate speak, all the jargon, all the acronyms that mean nothing to the average job seeker have to go. You have to really now focus on a diverse candidate pool as well and get rid of those words like rock star and things like that to speak maybe only to a male audience in order to attract more women as well.
I totally think I'm a rock star, so that would apply to me too.
There's now like Textio out there and Tap Recruit as well, where they will kind of analyze your job description and tell you to strip out these words to make it more diverse sounding and things like that are coming out. So it's really important. That's the biggest mistake I see today, is just that cut and paste mentality and not really taking just a little fresh look at the text on that listing, because the words go a long way. Words matter. In fact, when I was looking for my first recruiting job and I applied to this job, I read it, and they actually had a copywriter read it. I found out later. They had a copywriter write this thing, and it really spoke to me as far as who I was and what I wanted to do. And that's the reason why I applied for the job, because I really loved how they described the job itself in the posting, and they took the time to actually do that overall. And that's a great thing to do, I think, overall. So hire a copywriter, hire somebody there at your company who's great at writing, and have them take a fresh look at their job postings.
In coaching my clients, often I'm brought on board because I'm helping them bring on either sometimes their first or their most important next position as part of a growth pattern. And they can be great at copying and pasting like a job description that's really boring from online, but their ability typically to write an ad that's fresh and really speaks the language is so difficult for them that having an outside person do it does just, it brings life to a job that someone would want to have, as opposed to just bore them to death. So I think that's a great tip. And too many people are just posting the job description. So I like your advice on that.
Yeah, most recruiters or HR people are not trained in writing, so it's not their fault, but you should be able to recognize the fact that you need help with this stuff. Go out, find a good writer. There's plenty of places to go do that, and definitely change it up.
Fantastic. I just wanted to quickly touch base on what is your favorite applicant software and why?
I'll give shout outs to my friends at Greenhouse and my friends at Smart Recruiters. I'll pick Greenhouse because they do something which to me is goes really towards converting more applicants online, and they don't require you to create an account in order to apply. A lot of the older applicant tracking systems out there force you to, when you click the apply button, you immediately are presented with a page that says create your account. And that's where job seekers basically stop applying at that point. It's a barrier to entry, right? But
Yep.
Greenhouse basically has yeah, right below the listing itself are all the fields you need to do to apply. Boom, it's quick. There's no need to create an account, and it definitely increases the conversions over time as you use it. And I'm a former user of Smart Recruiters as well at one of my old jobs. They do a great job at the user experience as well. They've got an app that you can use as a recruiter to help make your job easier and more efficient overall. I don't think a lot of ATSs have an app, and so I'll give them credit for that as well and point that out.
Awesome. Thank you. Good recommendations. So you have a crystal ball, right?
Sure.
Can you envision how recruiting might change in the next 5 years? What would your crystal ball tell us?
I think it's evolving into a much more automated process overall. So you're seeing these things like chatbots come on now, especially if you're a high volume employer and you hire a lot of people, thousands each year. These chatbots are now kind of becoming little virtual recruiters, if you will. They are screening the candidates. In some cases, they're actually scheduling the interview for the candidates as well. They're screening them out, so then they're rejecting them at that point. You got things like video interviewing happening now, asynchronous, where you can basically answer a question, submit it back up to the cloud, and then wait for the employer to respond back. So the automation of recruiting is happening, and it's only going to get stronger as the years come faster here. Chatbots are getting a lot of funding in HR tech venture capital, and so it's a big piece of what's happening overall. So the job of like the recruiter assistant is definitely kind of being taken over by these chatbots overall. So that's a big thing of what's happening and that I see. And part of it, it's definitely part of it's a good thing too, right? There's some pretty good evidence now that these automated text reminders, things like that, are really helping to prevent ghosting from employers and getting people to show up at actual interviews instead of being, abandoning them, just not coming and not showing up, which has been a big problem. So I think overall it's a pretty good thing. You just have to kind of make sure we balance it between enough human activity and the right amount of technology to make sure that overall experience is good for both candidate and employer.
For sure. From the automation standpoint and kind of the tracking software, one awesome tool that the one at least I have the most experience using offers is that as soon as a applicant applies, that it auto calls them and basically thanks them and then asks them to leave a voice recording, and you could ask them anything at all. The ability to see that as part of the applicant process, especially in a role that might make sense, that someone might be customer facing or have to think logically or be able to effectively communicate or whatever it may be, you can tell a lot about a candidate and how they leave a voicemail message.
Oh, totally. I love that idea of calling them as soon as they apply and
Yep.
thanking them. That's pretty cool.
Yep, and it does. People notice it and they either immediately hang up and go, "Oh, don't want that," or so it's one of the hoops, and I call them hoops. I kind of look for things to deselect a candidate on if it makes sense, and that's one of them. But I love that. I love that feature. It's made recruiting so much easier. Awesome. All right, so Chris, what do you see are the most common problems with career sites?
I think a lot of companies will bury the jobs on their career site. It's kind of hard to find where to go to actually see the actual job opportunities. So I always want to see the jobs foremost front and center, or at least have the latest jobs on the homepage right there on your career site so they know where to go to find those. And just overall, just the lack of content they talk about, the hiring process or the benefits or things like that. Lack of depth, I think, is a big problem out there.
You also mentioned ghosting. So how common of a problem is this, and what can employers do about ghosting employees or ghosting by employees?
It's pretty big for many companies out there, particularly on the low end of scale in terms of the lower entry level jobs. People are just not showing up for interviews, or they'll get the job and not show up to go to the job because they found something better in the meantime. So it is a real problem out there. The Wall Street Journal did a story on it last year. They got a lot of play and talk in recruiting circles. And the kind of the cure to that is constantly reminding that person, hey, you have an interview or your start date is here. And so if you have an interview on like a Monday, you should remind them on Friday and also Sunday nights to make sure they show up. It'll really increase the amount of show rates overall. But yeah, it is a problem out there for many companies, and it's something that technology can certainly help with.
I think a certain amount of ghosting has happened in the recruiting, platform that I help clients with, and I just plan for work should someone not show up. But I am a coach. You either own being there or you don't, and I don't like to babysit anyone, so I have backup work just in case, which is a strategy, I think. But it is a problem. How important is Glassdoor for recruiting?
Interesting. So it's funny you mentioned that. I just had a call today with a client, and he goes, "Yeah, we paid the Glassdoor ransom to push our bad listings down." We called it a ransom.
Yes, it is.
If you have a bad rating on there, it's not going to help. That's for sure. So I think it's important for every company, if they have bad ratings, to proactively take a more a proactive approach with Glassdoor overall. You want to, get your employees involved. You want to, when you get a person on board after the first 30 days, ask them to go, rate their, first month on the job. Chances are it's going to be a good review overall, but you've got to really get in there and manage that thing on a regular basis if you want to improve your scores overall. But it is important. There are stories out there where companies, I'm hearing, just anecdotally, hey, we need to improve our Glassdoor rating because, we're getting killed on interviews and things like that because candidates are mentioning it, and they're telling the companies, hey, I looked at your Glassdoor and it's not really good, so why should I come work here? So it's important today to do that, to manage their reputation overall, and that's why pushing out content that kind of counteracts that message on social media and your other channels is so important.
So in wrapping up, I just want to make sure, I don't know if we've really highlighted, what does Rec Tech Media do with companies? How do you help your clients?
So I'll talk about the free stuff first, because that's really where I love to talk about these things. Is I see my job as basically helping to educate recruiters out there, HR people, on the latest tips, tricks, and tactics about finding talent online. And so by pushing out content for them, whether it's through our podcast, whether it's through our webinar series at rectechlive.com, we also have a aggregator called Recruiting Headlines, which basically aggregates a bunch of different news blogs for the industry and some vendors as well, and then pushes out the daily email to you for the latest headlines out there. It's a great free tool to take advantage of. I do, get on my newsletter list. I push out lots of content on making you better recruiters out there overall. So definitely take advantage of that stuff. So I spend kind of, probably a third of my week working on that stuff. And then the rest of the time, I basically do consulting for both employers and vendors. I just finished a career site audit for a company where I broke down their career site and told them what was wrong with it, how I should fix it overall. I'm doing some digital recruiting campaigns for a company in the mental health field to fill some of their therapist positions. So we're starting some Google and Facebook advertising campaigns for them. And of course, I do EVP consultations and all that kind of good stuff. So it's kind of in a nutshell what you can find me doing on a regular basis.
Fantastic. Well, I know that recruiting is one of the biggest challenges that probably our country faces at this point in time. So thank you for being an expert in that particular segment. I just want to make sure that our listeners have an opportunity to understand how they can reach you. So what would be your preferred, where would you direct them to learn more about you and your company?
Yeah, thanks, Allison. rectechmedia.com. You can find me on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, even Facebook. Just feel free to reach out. And my email is chris@rectechmedia.com.
Fantastic. Chris, thank you so much for the opportunity to connect with you today and kind of get the lowdown on your area of specialty. It's been a pleasure having you on the show.
Oh, thank you, Allison. It's a pleasure being here, and thanks for the opportunity.
Awesome. Thank you.